All right, let's get our Facebook folks in here and we can start the show. Got the spinning wheels going. 1 and 2. All right, welcome in, welcome in. It is time to talk some Broncos on this fine Wednesday morning. I am Nick Kendall and joined by Scott Kennedy as always. This is Broncos for breakfast. Scott, how you doing? What's new? Did you have a relaxing Memorial Day weekend?
I did. I was off for a change as far as kid sports. So it
Hmm,
was just work.
there you
Just
go.
work. Had some little grill out with my parents though, so that was nice. The ladies were in Florida, so it was pretty chill around here.
Yeah, well, there you go. What's your as a vegetarian, what is your go-to for the on the grill? I mean, obviously there's obvious great on the grill veggie options, but what do you like?
Yeah, on the grill, I just got one of those like Beyond Burger things, and
Oh,
and
they're actually
honestly,
pretty good.
yeah, I mean, by the time you put a tomato, mustard, ketchup on it, you can't tell the damn difference. All it tastes like is grill and burger at the end of the day. Unless you're getting one of those big thick daddies, then
Yeah.
you don't
Excuse
really
me?
thick daddies. You don't really notice. You can't really tell much of a difference. But
Yeah.
I can live on site. It's like, oh, we're going to a barbecue place. You're a vegetarian. I'm like, yeah, but I like baked beans and potato salad and macaroni and cheese and cornbread and
Mhm.
collard green. I like all that stuff. You can feed me just fine at a barbecue place on sides.
Yeah, unless they got the beans with the meat in them, which is my
Yeah, I
favorite.
know.
Some of
I
the
went to a place where everything was cooked with bacon. I'm like,
Yep.
okay,
Yeah, that's man, got me hungry. I have not had good barbecue in a bit. We got a lot of good Korean barbecue out here in Seattle. A lot of good Korean barbecue, but do miss that. My sister was in Kansas City for a number of years, and we'd try all the barbecue places out there, and that was a good time. But not to get completely off the rails with our thick daddies in here. We're trying not to be thick daddies these days, getting on that workout grind. But let's say hello to people in the chat. We got Jeremy Sean said, if I had to be a vegan, I'd probably go into some sort of depression. Scott didn't say vegan.
yeah, I'm not vegan. That's too much work. I like to eat. I like to be full. As
Mhm.
long as there is enough, I'm happy. So I don't really
Yeah,
care, and it's too much work to
yeah,
be vegan. I'm like, Jeremy, you've known me long enough, man. If I'm in a pinch and I can't whip up a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I think that actually is vegan. Or a bowl of cereal, I'm in trouble. So
yeah.
and I still go cheese, but I'm just a vegetarian. Vegan, that's a pain in the that's too big of a pain.
Yeah, God bless them. But cheese for sure. I would go in I'd be in a dark place without cheese, and also absolutely love eggs. I could
Yeah,
have eggs every day. But my wife is mostly vegetarian as well. She's more flexitarian now, a little bit more bird meat, whatever that is called when you do that as well. But definitely the meat intake has dropped since moving out from Iowa, and that's okay. Eating mostly a little healthier, but let's talk about healthy. Let's say a lot of people in the chat. We did have Jeremy come in, says, I haven't heard great reports about Javonte so far this offseason. Tim Patrick, on the other hand, has looked good. Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit here, talking about the bounce back candidates for the Broncos. We got Todd in the house saying good morning. Good to see you. David Youngkin. David's always in here. Good to see you. David says, morning, everyone. Hope it's Tim Patrick concerning what we're going through with Sutton. We'll see what happens with Sutton. We got Huge Elephant says, morning, y'all. Hard for the down and dirty positions to stick out in the glorified walkthroughs. Javonte's business is breaking tackles. Not looking good, jogging in shorts. Good point there. Dave Glassman in here. Chase Wellner. Monica, always good to hear from you. Hope you're doing well. We have Chase Wellner says, do you guys have any thoughts on the NFLPA proposing having training camp start in June? Anything to get rid of OTAs and the overreactions there if you want to have that happening. They'll do what they want to do. I don't really have strong thoughts on it. It's changed, so it'll always be met with some resistance, I'm sure, because it's not the way things are. People kind of get used to the flow of things, but adapt or die. And if the NFLPA is for it, typically I am pro NFLPA.
yeah, me too. And again, just how does it change a schedule? If they want to go to 18 games, what do they need to change? Do you just go to 2 games and then add a bye week, and then you're there? But if you're starting in June, are you practicing longer? Are there more breaks? Do you have the mini camp and then some time off, or is it installs? What exactly is it? So again, it's good for the younger players. And we just got done talking about Justin Simmons and how He's probably trying to avoid training camp right now and will sign after some of them because he doesn't need them, and they don't necessarily need them by the time they've been in the league 5 or 6 years too. So you might see more OG days for sure. So
yeah, which be fine with it. No issue. Broderick Cook coming in says, "Afternoon, everyone. Hope I'm not intruding. Just like listening to Nick and Scott." Also says, "Can you have Simmons off of us?" Simmons is a free man, so that's on him. We got nothing to do with that, but I'm hoping that he goes to a good NFC situation because I've loved Simmons since Boston College, and that would be a good spot for him. Man, that was a heck of a draft. Denver could have, if they would have flipped quarterback and defensive line, Scott, they could have walked out with Chris Jones and Dak Prescott, but instead they end up with Paxton Lynch and Adam Gotsis. But, not that I'm holding a grudge there or anything.
No, and it's just a cautionary tale. Everybody in the world is excited about their draft picks right now.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a post last night during your podcast. It was on building the Broncos. I think we got a lot of steals in the draft. I'm like, just insert team name here. I could copy and paste that into 32 team chats and get people to agree with me. And that's just the way it is. The long and the short of it is half these guys won't make it. You're just hoping that half do and become really good players. And the more picks you have, the greater chance you have that if half make it, well, I had 10 picks. I got 5 players. When I only have 6 picks and half make it, and then I'm in trouble. So we're always for more picks is more good, is more better type for me and Nick on here. That's just the mathematics around it.
Yeah, I will say, I think there is a drop off. The Rams last season, what they did is pretty unprecedented.
Yeah.
For the amount of hits they had day 3 and late, but granted, the amount of picks they had too is not seen. But give me top 100 picks. I think once you fall in the 5th round, 6th round, you have to be real about the probability of hitting. But yeah, those picks day 2 especially. That's one thing that, obviously they had Bill Belichick, they had Tom Brady, but the Patriots for a good. God, it felt like 5 or 6 drafts were trading down from like the 1st round to the middle of the 2nd and getting like a future 2nd out of it over and over again, and just building a really good just core of their roster, especially along the lines of scrimmage. So give me those top day 2 picks, top 100 picks. You got to hit on them in the end. You can have them, but that's really what I like.
Well, when we talk top 100 picks, how about even top 50 picks? How many top 50 picks have the Broncos had in the last 3 years?
Just Bo Nix.
One. Yeah. Bo Nix. Okay, that's
hard to build a team.
That's not good on the probability scale. When you're drafting guys 60 and beyond, that's not good for the probability scale. And you better hope you get some steals on that.
Yep. And that's one of the reasons that the Broncos, it's not just the dead cap stuff this season, it's the lack of those guys that should be your emerging difference makers on the roster without your improbable overhits with, the likes. Nick Bonitto overhit so far, I think, compared to his draft slot. You take what he's brought so far, probably 15 spots higher. But you haven't had enough picks where that's happening to really make too much of a difference on the roster.
Well, in the previous 2 years, the guys that should be making up the backbone of your team, you haven't picked before 60. Mm-hmm. Your first 3 picks are 63, 67, 64 in 2023 and 2022. What are your realistic expectations for those guys? Or I hope I get somebody. Mm-hmm. But, you take a guy in the 1st round, you're thinking, okay, I got a 10-year plug and play starter. That's what you're expecting.
Yeah.
Now, there's always going to be misses there too. But when I take a guy in the 1st round, I'm expecting to have that position. Whatever else I got that position taken care of for the next decade. When you're drafting guys in the 60s and that's your first time. So, we were willing to give Nick Bonitto, he's been a bust, blah, blah, blah. No, he was picked as an edge rusher in the 60s. He's a 2nd round pick, but he was the last 2nd round pick. So I agree with you. I think he's overplayed his draft position to a certain extent this year.
Yep. So we'll see. Man, we really need some guys from that 2022 and 2023 class to emerge if this team is going to break their over-under, according to Vegas. Zach Powers in the house. Morning.
He's 7th, Nick. He's 7th overall in sacks. Nick Bonitto is from that draft class right now. It goes Aiden Hutchinson, George Karlaftis, Kayvon Thibodeau, Trevon Walker, Boye Mafe, and Jermaine Johnson. And then Nick Bonito was taken 64th, and here's some guys that went after him that are still behind him. Arnold Ebiketie, Atlanta Falcons at 38. Sam Williams at 56, Dallas Cowboys. Devontae Watt, 28th to the Green Bay Packers.
He's defensive tackle, though.
Yeah, defensive tackle, but I'm just talking about as far as sacks go.
Okay.
Wyatt, 61 was Drake Jackson. And then Kyle Hamilton's actually on the list as a safety. There's a difference maker at 14. Yeah. Alex Wright, 78. That is actually after. Let's see. Quay Walker, inside linebacker. Logan Hall was a 33. Josh Pascal was 46. So yeah. But he's done better than his draft spot. But his draft spot is in the 60s.
Yep. If he can end up being a super sub pass rusher type at 60 at a position like edge, which is very much first round or good luck, that's fine return on investment. We got Huge Ellie fan says, that's why I disagree with people saying that we could be the new Texans. They went through years of drafting early and have tons of cap space to make that turnaround. They also hit on a blue chip quarterback prospect, but the bones were there. I mean, you're correct. They had enough draft picks that they were able to, thanks to the Deshaun Watson trade, that they were able to go up and not only get CJ Stroud last year, but trade up for the highest rated defensive prospect in 3 seasons to go get Will Anderson. So yeah, that's a team that definitely built in a better situation than where Denver is holistically right now. They have a lot of top picks on that team and also hit on some day 2 talent at premium positions, like Nico Collins getting $25 million a year. Tank Dell out there as well. They obviously have one of the best offensive tackles in football in Tunsil, and then you hit on Stroud. So that's a team that I agree with you, Hugh Jelly fan. A different situation than where Denver's at. They had much more assets heading into last season and this season, of course, as well.
Going into last season, we just said this was a player who we don't know exactly for sure what we're going to get in Bo Nix. You didn't know what you're going to get from CJ Stroud, but if you hit, you hit. But again, the expectations for a rookie quarterback are mid at best for coming in. Bo Nix is the only top 50 pick the Broncos have had in the last 3 years. In the last 2 seasons, going into last year, so last 2023 and 2022, the Houston Texans had 6 top 50 picks in those 2 classes. So I agree with you on this one. As far as why I think they can be the new Texans, I think you're a year behind that. I think that's next year where you've got a better draft. You still didn't have a second round pick this year. You're still behind, but you are in much better financial shape. If you hit on your quarterback, you got the money next year. I think you're 1 year behind the 2023 Texans. You're the 2022 Texans right now, not the 2023.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we'll see. I just don't think that's an exact pathway, but if you hit on the quarterback, things can change pretty darn quickly. That's for sure. Monica's in the house this morning. Guys, Jonathan Cooper, what do you guys expect from him as a player this season? Do you think he can bounce back being better than he was last season? I think he was fine last season. Honestly, I think he was not crazy off his historical baseline. You're talking about a 7th round pick that kept on the roster. I mean, that's already a win for your ROI. And he is somewhere between, you don't love him as a starter, but you love him as a 2nd string guy. But given where Denver's at roster wise right now, specifically at edge, you're happy with him. You did just take Ellis. You have Benito. You lost Sanders, which changes the room a bit. But Cooper is one who, if you can bring him back on a 2nd string caliber edge rusher contract, maybe that's something you think about, especially if Browning deals with more injuries. But to me, he is more of a jag than anything else. But again, just a guy as a 7th round pick, a serviceable guy that's on track to hit that, vested veteran. That's a heck of a get that late in the draft for a position like edge. So I don't mean you have to have that conversation about where he was drafted. But on the whole, I mean, if you're talking, he's very much a average, slightly below average player when you're talking purely as an edge rusher.
Oh, purely as anything, as a 7th round pick, and you said this already too. A 7th round pick that gets a 2nd contract with his team is a hit. At best, 7th round draft picks are getting, typically, they're getting those who's that guy contracts to fill out the 90-man roster the second go round, because there's not enough difference between him and the next batch of 7th round picks that you are willing to give him a second contract where you would rather have the new guy coming in on a rookie deal. So it's Jonathan Cooper has been an unqualified success for the Denver Broncos for his draft position. The problem is you don't want him starting and playing every snap. That's the problem. And that's not on Jonathan Cooper. That's on the Denver Broncos. That's, I've said, y'all have heard me say it a zillion times, especially you, Nick. If a guy's not good enough, that's not his fault.
Mm-hmm.
If he's out there doing everything he can and playing his hardest and giving good effort and good attitude and is a good teammate, I'm for him. As much grief as we've given Jonathan Harris, it's not his fault that he's out there. He's not good enough. That's not his fault that he's being put into that situation. He should be a backup reserve at best type of guy. That's on the organization for not doing a better job of filling that spot. Jonathan Cooper has been a great draft pick for the Denver Broncos.
But at the same time, he is closer to a Jag. And if you get Jag's 7th round every year, you sign up for that because that's somebody who's making the roster and has a pathway to contribute.
An average NFL guy, that's awesome for 7th round.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, your chance of hitting, what are the odds of even a 7th round pick making it to year 3 in the NFL? It's got to be less than 50%.
I think a lot of them make it just because they're sticking around as special teams guys and stuff.
Yeah.
Again, but as soon as that contract is up, how many of them are getting second contracts from the team that drafted them? It's multi-year at least, where there's some guaranteed money in there. It's hard.
Not a lot.
You're trying to get special teams guys back then, and then maybe we get lucky.
Yep.
And then maybe you hit the freaking jackpot and get your quarterback in the 7th round.
Yeah, it's good to be the 49ers for sure, other than the Chiefs at the end of the tunnel. But we got them at the front of the tunnel, unfortunately. String guy comes in, says, good morning, I had the day off, so I'd catch up on if there's anything new happening. Not sure there's anything too new happening, but we're hanging out. I don't know if we said hi to Michael yet. God bless you, Michael. We always love you coming in, helping us every morning. Mark's in the house. Always great to see you, Mark. Quentin Caldwell, fantastic to see you, Quentin. Hope you're doing well. Hope you had a good holiday weekend. We always appreciate you coming in. And Scott, I did want to get into our bounce back candidates. I think number 1 for Denver has to be Javonte Williams. This is a team that you're going to have a rookie quarterback back here. We saw kind of what Sean Payton wanted to do with heavy personnel last season. And while you did invest in the running back room this offseason, with Estime, you brought in Watson to a pretty good undrafted free agent contract. The path is still clear for Williams to be the starter out there. P. Ryan might not make it, and you don't have anybody as talented on paper as Williams. Now, he's coming off a poor season last season, but even before that, Scott, before his injury, his yards over expectation were pretty low. So what the offensive line blocked, he wasn't always the best at taking advantage of the lanes and the run blocking. That was an issue before he was injured. That was an issue last season as well. Big thing is can we get that strength and explosiveness back? We talked about it on here a few times, but the big stat that changed between before injury and after injury was that yards after contact per carry. He went to being one of the best breaking tackle runners in all of football the first year and 3 games of his career in the NFL. I think he was top 3, just breaking tackle after tackle, even if he didn't have great vision and not taking advantage of some of the run lanes, was able to make a guy miss and do things from there. Last season, he was, I think, just outside of the top 26, 25 in terms of broken tackles and yards after contact per carry. We'll see if that can turn around. I am a little bit skeptical that we can see him return to that form given the seriousness of that knee injury, the fact that he plays a running back position the last year of his contract already. Even though Denver invested in him, they would be, from an organizational standpoint, they should be really hoping that somebody young with more years of control steps up and pushes Williams, maybe even takes his spot. But I think Williams, probably out of all the guys we'll talk about today, has the best path towards being bounced back this season.
I think that's a great shout. PFF has a different candidate that they wrote up. I'm going to hit on him in a second, but I want to talk about Javonte Williams and some of the points that you made. Talking about the yards after contact, I'm sure within that metric somewhere, it also says, where was his first point of contact? Was it at 0.1 yards past the line of scrimmage? Was it 1.2 yards? Was it, -3? something like that. Where was the first point of contact? Because, and I don't think this is the case just based on, him being injured. And I think the running game I didn't see a big difference in between his rookie year and then last year. That there's a big difference between contact at 0.5 with the big eaters and the 300-pounders trying to bounce that tackle. And when your first point of contact is a linebacker at 2 yards past the line of scrimmage, there's 50, 60 pounds of difference there. That said, I think with him, part of the recovery period is going to be trusting in that knee. If I'm in a pile, I am a lot less likely to twist, to turn, to try and pull my leg when someone's wrapped around my legs, to try and pull out of that if I don't fully trust my legs just yet. I'm like, all right, I'm down, I'm going down. I think you'll see that little bit of extra fight that might have been missing last year just because of the trust factor and the stability of your legs. And I think that'll help him. But yes, last year, did he have a great year? No. Medically speaking, he had a miracle year.
Mm-hmm.
He was a medical miracle that he was even out there. This is his first year back, as far as I'm concerned. And now we'll judge. Let's see the first 4 games. Now we're going to judge Javonte Williams. The fact that he even played last year was a medical freaking miracle.
Yeah, I agree with you. With that said, it is a results-based business, and your windows are very small and short, and you play the most turnover position, the least value position. I push back. I know there's been some content this offseason talking about like what wide receivers are kind of going to be like running backs with them coming in. Well, the market has not said that even close to that so far. Playmakers at the pass catching skill spot, especially difference makers, I think are always going to be in vogue. It's kind of hard to pay a guy, $30 million a year if you're also paying the quarterback, but that's a different team building top conversation. But Javonte Williams, definitely a bounce back guy. I'm hoping for him. He seems like a good kid. And I'm hoping that, again, you mentioned it's a miracle that he played last season at all. I wasn't expecting him to play. 2 ligaments in his knee, zapped, complete tears, I believe. And just didn't look like the same guy last year. We'll see what he looks like this season. I know Jeremy mentioned that early reports are it's not great, but again, another comment is it's OTAs. It's kind of like when you go down to the Senior Bowl, Scott, and it's like the first 3 days, like, oh, how did the running back and the linebackers look? I don't know. They're not playing football. They're out there like it's 7-on-7 right now. That's not really what the NFL is. So we won't know honestly until preseason, even maybe a couple weeks into the season, where Javonte Williams is at and where he's going. But I'm pulling for him. Last year of his contract, I'm hoping that he'll stick around somewhere, obviously, but this is going to be his chance to make some money, and hopefully he gets a chance to do that by playing well this season.
And Keith comes in with some stars. Thank you, Keith. He says, it's tough to know if you've got steals in the draft when they don't see the field. Do we see more of the 2023 class, and how about the 2024 class? You think you see some glimpses of Marvin Mims, and then he's mothballed. You saw a poor start from Drew Sanders, and then he was gone, and then that was about it. Who am I forgetting from last year?
Riley Moss played some linebacker stuff.
Yeah, not really. He didn't play, though.
Season. He was good in special teams, specifically in the gunner role.
But he was out a lot of the year physically.
Yep, he had that hernia. So, I mean, that's about it right now. But also with how poor
Forsythe and Skinner didn't play, you only had 5 guys.
Yeah. McLaughlin, not a draft pick, but out there as well, undrafted free agent. That said, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like there's like the Broncos. There was some piece of media out there recently, like the Broncos 2021 draft class. Look how many snaps these guys have gotten. Well, the roster's bad, right? So like you're having a lot of guys play that if you had more talent, maybe wouldn't be getting the snap count. Snap count isn't always the most indicative of difference makers. You have to have the context of the actual talent you have on the roster.
Yeah, when you're a bottom quarter defense, what difference does it make if you're out there playing? That might actually be a bad thing.
Yeah. There's some selection bias in there when you talk about stuff like that. But,
I would say you look at it's changed a little bit, but back in the day, you look at the freshman all SEC team, you know where they came from? Kentucky and Vanderbilt. Yep. Because freshmen weren't playing at the good schools. They were waiting their turn. So it's always it's a matter of opportunity sometimes as well. All rookie team. Well, they were the only ones that played. That it's not quite like that in the NFL. Again, when you take a guy in the first round, you're expecting him to see the field a lot. And frankly, the Denver Broncos this year are no exception for us. Do you know who PFF chose?
I just saw it. A little shocking.
They chose, as far as bounce back players, they chose Pat Surtain. And the reasoning is he didn't have quite as good a year. It was basically, he is considered one of the NFL's premier defensive backs, but he was targeted 20 more times in 2023, and he gave up 15 more catches for 284 yards. He had 6 penalties, which was more than his first 2 years combined. Okay? Well, that's a little bit of a drop. I mean, that's, if you're saying he was, this good this year, he may have taken a step, playing in a new system, et cetera, et cetera. But that wasn't a drop off. Damari Mathis dropped off from 2022 to 2023, where he was considered, okay, this guy looks pretty good. And now he's like, oh my God, get him off the field. There's a bounce back candidate. And one of the interesting things about this topic, Nick, you can look at it two ways. You can say, okay, this is depressing because there's so many guys that underperformed, or you can think of it as encouraging because there's so many guys out there that we know can be better, and in year 2 they should be of Sean Payton. They could be. So therefore, we can be a lot better on the field. DJ Jones. How about DJ Jones as a bounce back candidate? He was really good in 2022. He was not in 2023.
Yep. I had 3 players that really stood out in my mind. Javonte Williams was one. DJ Jones was the next. So I'm hoping that he's better this season. You went out and signed Roach, who can hopefully take up some of the space eating. I don't know if you have a true zero technique body other than Blackson, who honestly, I mean,
Angelo Blackson.
Yeah, not really much of a needle mover at that spot. We're still hopefully maybe looking for a 0 or 1 technique, but we'll see. But DJ Jones really struggled. Not really struggled last season. Did not look like
he struggled last season.
Yeah, but I really struggled. Might have been overstating it a little bit, but he struggled last season, without a doubt. And honestly, to the point where I'm a little surprised he was back on that contract, considering the cost cut moves and the fact that he was signed by a previous regime. But he's back. I'm really hoping that he can take a step forward because the depth on the defensive line is still questionable for me. And you have better pieces around him. In theory, you added another edge rusher. We'll see what Ellis does, but in theory, that should help the room. You added, obviously, John Franklin Myers as well, which should be a step up no matter where he's playing exactly. And also, quite frankly, you need him to step up because your linebacker room is highly questionable entering this season. Now you're without Sanders. Barton really struggles against the run. Griffith, I thought about maybe mentioning him as a bounce back, but he's one that, can you bounce back if you haven't really been? The bounce requires being up here before.
Right. Like Greg Dulcich. He hasn't done anything yet.
That's another name.
We can't call him a bounce back because he hasn't done anything yet.
Yes. That was another name that was in my mind. It's like, can he be a bounce back? Bounce implies that you are up here to.
He's NA, not eligible. NE. Not eligible.
So players like that, I saw Bozarike mentioned in here. I saw, obviously, Jonas Griffith. Greg Dulcich was another one I thought of. Another one, Scott, maybe it's such a small sample size, but Caden Stearns was another name where it's like, is he even a bounce back? Because there was like that one game against Indy where he was awesome, but it was
remember that one time at band camp? I mean, come on. We've seen guys have flashes. You got to at least put 1 year out there where you were good.
Yeah.
And then dropped, and then to be a bounce back. And he doesn't have enough snaps. Lawrence Rivera, he's always in here, though. He says, I'm working, so I can't hear, but I'll watch later. And he's still coming in with some stars. Thank you, sir. That's we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to support the show, even if you can't listen live. That's awesome. Jay Roper had a couple names here because I'm going to come back to Jay, but he said, did we cut our slot corner Williams? K1 had a 2-year deal. I think he's out of contract, so I don't think he was cut. I'm pretty sure he was out of contract. And Jay, you also had another comment in here because we hit on 2 of these, but McGlinchey, I think, and frankly, Ben Powers, I think, didn't have the greatest year last year. He was okay, but you didn't send him $15 million a year to be okay at guard. You want him to be one of the top 5 guards in the NFL. McGlinchey, you want to be one of the top 5 right tackles in the NFL. He was not. So those, I think both Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey fit the bill on this as well.
I didn't think about Ben Powers. I think he played fine.
You didn't pay him for fine though, and he didn't earn that contract for being okay. You paid him to be the opposite of Quinn Miners. And I mean, not as in bad, because Quinn Miners is good. I mean, you're looking it up like, oh, wait a minute, let me see on this. But Ben Powers was just meh. You didn't pay
I'm
for
looking
meh.
for the average per year on him, just because I didn't think he was paid crazy.
He's good. 8 figures at guard is good money.
He's the 8th highest paid left guard, and typically left guards get paid less. Typically, left guards get paid less than right guards, so he's probably somewhere in the.
All right, 12th. So that's 8 of 32. That's top quarter.
Yeah, he probably wasn't top quarter, but I don't know if he was. I don't know if he was bad enough to the extent where I'm including him in the bounce back.
And where was he in 2023? Because guards got paid. Are there a couple that jumped him this year?
Dickerson jumped him for sure. Jonah Jackson.
When you brought him in, he was a top 20% guard. That's what you were paying for.
Yeah.
And you paid him because that's what you were expecting. You didn't get it. So for me, Ben Powers is a bounce back candidate. He did not play as well with Denver in his first year, which is no shock. That happens when you change teams, as he did in Baltimore. So he qualifies as a bounce back candidate for me.
Okay. I won't fight you too much on that. I think I'm not expecting significantly better from him. I think what you got last season is probably about where I'm expecting him going forward, which is okay. Solid. You're getting solid from him. He's somebody who's definitely going to, 9 months from now, we're probably talking about him on the chopping block, that kind of level of play for that kind of player with his contract. But we'll see. McGlinchey is a great shout out too. And somebody made a good comment in here about having a quarterback who's a little bit better at getting rid of the football and playing within the pocket. Now I have some questions about how that translates for Bo Nix, just because of what they did at Oregon. I think some of the under pressure stats and within pocket and structure, still some questions there for him, like helping his offensive line to that extent, but he's going to get rid of the ball quickly. And I do expect McGlinchey to have a bounce back to that level. Cause you had Russell Wilson bailing on pockets, holding on the ball too long, hunting when he should have just been getting rid of the football. The last one, of course, Scott, before we get to the original Dizzy D, and we're going to wrap up the show here soon, Tim Patrick. We've talked about it on here ad nauseum. The wide receiver, the skill positions outside of Cortland Sutton, it is question mark after question mark, which is not good on paper, but that also means there's a lot of opportunity. There's a reality out there where Tim Patrick is healthy this year, playing physical, love his brand of football, his style. I'm happy he's back. It's hard to bet on somebody who's been injured and out of football that long, but there's a reality where he ends up being the Broncos' number 2 wide receiver this season in terms of impact and value. So Tim Patrick is one that is definitely a bounce back candidate. I have a hard time banking on him considering what they're paying him and the injuries the last 2 seasons, but man, I am pulling for him for sure.
It's so scary with him because it's like, okay, he's looked great. He's looked great. He's looked great. Oh, he's gone. He's done. It just feels like anytime you see him on the field and moving, you're holding your breath. Mm-hmm. And that's a scary situation for everybody. I'm sure it's for him too. Talk about trust. We mentioned that earlier with Javonte. Is he willing to spin out of a guy? Guy's got a hold of his ankle. Is he going to twist out of that and try and pull out of that now? Well, he might this year. How about poor Tim Patrick out there? And what he's gone through. Michael agrees. Tim Patrick's a bounce back candidate for me if he's healthy. I'll tell you what else he is if he's healthy. He's a comeback player of the year candidate. If he puts up 700 yards, I think those were his last 2 years. He was in the 700 range his last 2 full seasons. I would consider him to be a comeback player of the year. I don't know if he's got the hype around him because he's been gone for so long now, but he should absolutely be in consideration if he can stay healthy and put up some numbers and play 17 games. Would love to see it. Anything that I get from Tim Patrick this year is gravy for me. I'm not going in. Same with Dulcich. What are your expectations for him? I don't have any. I have my expectations are I need a backup plan. Those are my expectations for those 2 players, unfortunately.
Yeah, he is somebody who it's just gravy if you get anything from him at this point, right? So we'll see. We'll monitor. We got the original Dizzy D coming in, says any tight ends or linebackers from the UFL we should be looking at possibly adding. I mean, yes, but names I couldn't tell you. I'm going to leave that to the professional scouts. I guess I have not watched any UFL. My time is very occupied these days with the little guy, and also it's nice to take a break in May after all the draft stuff. But he mentions Elise Mack, who I actually do remember from Notre Dame. There'll be bodies available, and they'll bring in some guys for camp tryouts, and we're cutting from 90 to 85 here. You might even see teams go down to 83, 80 to bring in some new bodies as well. But Mack is somebody that could definitely add tight end. They're really looking. I would imagine they're really looking at linebacker too. Now that Sanders is going to be out.
Doesn't say where he's from. I feel like I know Elise Mack. Like he was a California kid or something that I scouted back in the day. But it would have been a while. His reference page didn't say where he went to high school, but I do remember him coming out.
He's 27 years old, out of Vegas.
Okay. Oh, he was probably at Bishop Gorman then, because they all were at Bishop Gorman if they came out of Vegas. But I remember him coming out. So very cool.
5-star.
As far as this goes, original Dizzy D, the answer to your question, as Nick said, will be yes. There were a lot of players that got NFL tryouts coming out of that league, and I love it. I'm happy for them. I love having another avenue of generating income besides the NFL. And the NCAA now too. There's multiple ways to make money, except at the very tip of the top, and I'm glad for them. Several players got tryouts for this for every team. So there were dozens and dozens of players. I don't know who they are. I'm not scouting the UFL. But I do remember Elise Mack when he
did go to Bishop Gorman
high school. I'm sure
you were right.
Bishop Gorman. Everybody that can play within a 200-mile radius of Bishop Gorman ends up going to Bishop Gorman.
Good enough.
That's
news to me.
Recruiting private school. So, and I don't blame him. As a dad, if Bishop Gorman calls, hey, you want to come play with us? Well, that's a straight ticket to a Power 5 school or, a draft pick. Yeah, we're coming. We're on the way. But it's unfair for the competition. As a dad, I don't care. I don't want what's best for my son, and I would move. IMG calls. I'm going down to Bradenton. Original Dizzy D, yes. So stay tuned to milehighhuddle.com because there will be players that get invited for tryouts.
Yeah, without a doubt. So other than that, Scott, I mean, I'm looking at the roster. I can't think of many people who would qualify truly as a bounce back. I mean, you maybe toss out Damari Mathis, although he was really volatile his rookie season. It's hard for me to say he's totally a bounce back guy. Other than that, I mean, I don't know.
Maybe like the last several games to get this guy off the field and bury him.
Yeah.
I mean, he regressed, major regression.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't really think of many other ones. I guess we could throw in. We mentioned Dulcich is in there, not really bounce back, so to speak. The real dark horse one here, and I don't even think you can again call him bounce back because you have to be up here to bounce back to it. But Zach Wilson, I mean, there's no bouncing back there, right? That would be a breakout candidate because he was so bad from the start. But that's the only other one I can think of.
I just think, where's your Q rating? I mean, where is Bo Nix right now?
He hasn't played a snap, so it's high.
I know, but the expectations are high.
Yeah.
His Q rating is high. Zach Wilson's was like that. That I can, despite not playing, I can actually live with that one a little bit and I don't think it should be. I don't think anybody that was healthy should get comeback player of the year. But if he started 17 games for the Broncos and put up a 4,025, he'd get comeback player of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Shouldn't. Nobody that's healthy, you shouldn't get comeback player. They're just like, oh, what? You sucked and now you don't anymore? Congratulations. Give him a most improved, but not a comeback. Comeback should be for I'm away from football for non-football reasons. Injury count, but you know what I mean? Like if it's mental health or whatever, it took me away from the game. I wasn't able to play last year.
Yeah. So really, I mean, I can't think of anybody else that qualifies, unfortunately, and that's okay. So out of all the guys we mentioned, I think the big three are Williams, Patrick, and DJ Jones. We'll ask one final question, and Michael comes in to close us out. Says, great show today, guys. Thank you so much, Michael. Out of the three of Jones, Williams, and Patrick, which one would you bet on being the most likely comeback candidate?
Javonte. I go Javonte in order. I go Javonte. And I like McGlinchey in there too, honestly.
Oh, okay. Let's toss in
Yeah,
McGlinchey.
I like McGlinchey in there too. I would go Javonte, DJ, McGlinchey, Patrick in order of most likely to get back to where they are. I just think the skill set that DJ Jones has plays, big and fast interior line that works, where McGlinchey has always had questions in pass pro that didn't get better last year. Javonte, we've seen what he can be when he's healthy, so I think he's the number one. He's healthy for me, and
I think Javonte as well. Just the position he plays, there's going to be chances for him.
Opportunity.
Yep, and then after that, Jones. So I'm with you. Jeremy says McGlinchey. I'm hoping it's McGlinchey because he's the one that you are the most financially tied to the longest out of those other ones. If those other ones fail,
you tied yourself another year to him too.
Exactly. With
you could have gotten out of that deal this year, but by restructuring his contract, you've got 2 more years of being financially tied to him.
Yep.
So he's got to get better. Like you said, he's the one that was the one that got the most eyebrow raising when the deal was signed with the guaranteed money, and then you extended it another year. So you need him to be playing well.
Yeah, exactly. And as Scott coughs and we close it on up here, it's time. Make sure you guys are following us on Twitter. Scott is at Scott Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell, MHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, follow us at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as that ticker says there underneath, please subscribe, like, and share over on YouTube. Shout out to everybody who came in and contributed to the show today. Michael Ronquillo a few times. God bless you, Michael. Keith Brugman, Lawrence Vera, and the original Dizzy D. Appreciate you guys. We will be back again on Monday. Scott, good to see you. Have a great rest of your week. You guys continue to choose kindness and compassion. And as always, go Broncos.